Hi, welcome. Today I'm going to be discussing the JonBennet Ramsey case. I thought it was interesting because I got into an argument with some guy online, and he was claiming that the family is innocent because they were cleared. However, I believe there's room for doubt. You know, even if there was no DNA found on her persons or in her vaginal area, like I feel like there's circumstantial evidence that can prove that the family had something to do with it. Anyway, so this is the story of JonBennet Ramsey. Um, this is a timeline of her death and the story. At all the pomp and circumstance of the pageant scene became tainted with the holiday murder of the unlikeliest of homes. And at the heart of it was an innocent 6-year-old girl. So JonBennet was doing child pageants. Her mother put her up to do child pageants. I'm not really sure, like, why, because maybe the mother used to do it. I don't know. The discovery of JonBennet Ramsey's brutally murdered body on the morning after Christmas in 1996 in a spare room in the basement of the family's 7,000 square foot home in the Chautauqua neighborhood of Boulder, Colorado, shocked the nation. But it was the events that unfolded after that truly raised eyebrows and scratched heads, to the extent that there was no definitive answer as to what happened on that winter evening more than two decades ago. While the timeline of events leading up to the discovery of the body are unclear, that those that transpired after are all we know of who killed JonBennet. On December 23rd, 1993, a 911 call is made from the Ramsey home. 3 days before the body is found, a 911 call is made from the home. But on January 10th, it's reported that it was likely a mistake made by a drunk party guest, according to CNN. On December 25th, 1996, the Ramseys attend a Christmas party at a family friend's house. JonBennet gets a bike for Christmas after attending a Christmas party hosted by family friend Fleet White. The Ramseys go home and JonBennet goes to bed. Some theories say that she snuck back downstairs and fought with her brother over a late-night snack of pineapple. Indeed, the indigested tropical food was later found in her stomach. December 26, 1996, JonBennet goes missing. At 5:30 a.m., when Patsy gets up to make herself coffee, she discovers a 2.5-page handwritten ransom note on the back stairs leading to the kitchen and says her daughter has been kidnapped. According to the Denver Post, it says, "You will withdraw $118,000 from your account. $100,000 will be in $100 bills, and the remaining will be $18,000 in $20 bills." The note demanded, according to Psychological Today, that amount of money in those weird amounts of bills. Oddly, that was the exact amount of John's Christmas bonus. The note also said to not call the police. So Patsy calls 911. Patsy is JonBenet's mom. Before 6 a.m., police officer Rick French arrives at the home and does a search. He pauses by the door that JonBennet was later found behind, but doesn't open it, according to Newsweek. Who is this lady? Rick French? Let me write it down. Rick French. Rick French. Why wouldn't she open the door? That's weird. In the early afternoon, the first detective on the scene was Linda Arndt. I watched her interview, one of them, and she thinks she knows who killed JonBennet, and I'm going to show it to you. It's quite interesting. So Linda Arndt pulls aside John and White, who had come over to console his friends. Arndt tells them to do a top-to-bottom search of the home. It was during that search that John opened the door to the basement's spare room, ironically, where the Christmas presents had been hidden, and saw JonBenet's body. It looked like she had been strangled and her mouth and neck were covered with duct tape. He picked up the body and ran screaming upstairs. Arndt later moved the body closer to the Christmas tree upstairs. By bringing her upstairs and leaving the basement door open, much of the evidence became tainted. At 10:45 p.m., the Boulder County coroner's team removed the young girl's body from the house. On December 28, 1996, the Ramseys cooperated with the authorities. So the family goes to the police station, and they willingly give hair, blood, and handwriting samples. The police later state that John's grown children, John, Andrew, and Melinda, were out of town when the murder occurred, so are not suspected. On December 29, 1996, the family flies to Atlanta. So just after the murder, the Ramseys go back to their former hometown of Atlanta. So that raised some suspicion. Like, why would they do that right after their daughter's death? On December 31, JonBennet's funeral's hit. The 6-year-old is laid to rest in Marietta, Georgia, next to her older half-sister, Elizabeth, who had died in a tragic car accident in 1992. About 200 family and friends attend the ceremony at the Friends' old church. On January 1st, 1997, John and Patsy give a New Year's Day interview. They give a very difficult 45-minute-long interview to CNN from Atlanta, where they are now staying with family. While the Boulder police had been reassuring the community there wasn't a murder on the run, Patsy said on television, "There is a killer on the loose. If I were a resident of Boulder, I would tell my friends to keep your babies close to you. There's someone out there." She added, "America is suffering because we have lost faith in the American family," citing the example of the mystery of what had really happened with O.J. Simpson. We are a Christian, God-fearing family," they said. "We love our children. We would do anything for our children." On January 2nd, 1997, the investigators followed the family to Georgia. A team of 5 detectives from Boulder fly to Atlanta, according to CNN investigators. Investigators were shocked that the Ramseys granted the TV interview since they had claimed to be too emotional to talk to the police. So detectives announced on January 3rd that the note was written on a paper pad from inside the house, meaning it was likely written after the murder. John and Patsy returned to Boulder. Boulder cops also go to Charlevoix, Michigan, to search through a summer home the Ramsey family owns. After the Christmas and the New Year holidays, class resumes as JonBennet's former schoolteacher and counselors help the young children try to understand what happened to JonBennet, even though it continues to be a mystery. So school resumes, and the kids, her friends, they don't know what happened to her. They have to explain it to them. News comes out that there may have been a practice ransom note. Reportedly, there is evidence that the person who wrote the ransom note first practiced it on another piece of paper. The alibi of John Andrew, JonBennet's half-brother, was re-examined, even though he was allegedly out of town when it happened. Based on expert analysis, detectives confirm that John didn't write the ransom note, but say there is a chance Patsy may have wrote it. The police head back there on March 8th, reportedly looking for unrehearsed handwriting samples to see if Patsy wrote the ransom note. On April 3rd, DNA testing takes place. While there had already been a DNA test done by the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, a secondary one was done by Maryland's Cellmark Laboratories, according to the Denver Post. April 19th, JonBennet's parents become the prime suspects of the investigation. Obviously, the focus is on these people, Boulder's DA Alex Hunter says. So Patsy Ramsey was questioned in a formal interview as conducted with John for 2 hours and Patsy for 6.5 hours. These new statements replaced the initial ones made right after the murder. On May 2nd, Patsy's parents spoke to the local media. The victim's parents talked to the local press, including 9 News. John stumbles over his daughter's name and addresses the rumors of her possibly being sexually molested, calling those most hurtful innuendos. Well, here's where I don't understand. If he didn't do it, then why would he have a problem with that happening? Like, I know it's his daughter, but like, why would he not want to explore all avenues, so that they can catch the guy if they did that to his daughter? Patsy says, I'm appalled by anyone who would think that John or I would be involved with such a hideous and heinous crime. But let me assure you, I did not kill John. I didn't. Let me assure you, I didn't kill JonBennet. That's a weird thing to say. May 14, 1997. The DNA results have no surprises. Sources report that there are no surprises in the results of the DNA test, but don't specify what that means. The former child's beauty queen's belongings are moved across the country, or on a moving truck on July 12th. The previously sealed autopsy results are released. They confirmed a deep ligature around the victim's neck and another around the right wrist, evidence she was bound and strangled, and also say that blood and abrasions were found in the girl's vaginal area, and that she was struck on the head violently enough to cause bleeding and an 8.5-inch fracture to her skull. That's on July 14th. It was released. The Ramseys asked to review evidence before giving more interviews to the police. Their request is rejected. So they lawyered up, it looks like. They didn't want to do any more interviews with the police. John and Patsy submit the clothes they were wearing. 2 months after the police requested the parents hand over the clothes they were wearing the night of the crime, the Ramseys turn in 2 shirts, a pair of pants, and a sweater. Investigators formally call for a grand jury investigation since 15 months had already passed since the murder. The case's lead investigator, Mark Beckner, says there are significant results from the 1,058 pieces of evidence taken from the home. Details were not shared. June 10 to 12, 1998, JonBennet's brother Burke is questioned. JonBennet's older brother Burke, who was 9 at the time of the crime, and the only one known to be in the house that night, he's the only other one known, besides his parents, to be in the house, was also questioned for the first time. And Detective Steve Thomas writes an 8-page resignation letter saying that Hunter's office has crippled the case since elements had been thoroughly compromised. According to the Denver Post, Governor Roy Romer inquires as to whether he needs to step in. He eventually does. So a lot of people are like, oh yeah, the Ramsey, the parents, the family have been cleared. Okay, we can't say if they're guilty, but we can't say if they're completely innocent because the whole place was tampered with. The whole house was tampered with, so the evidence was messed up. White asks for Hunter to be dismissed. Family friend White asks to have someone other than Hunter assigned to the JonBennet case. I guess that's a lawyer. On August 20th, 1998, Burke's voice is reportedly overheard on a 911 call. Originally, the Ramseys had said Burke was asleep the morning his sister was discovered missing and didn't wake up until the police arrived. However, in the 911 tape that has now been enhanced, Burke's voice is reportedly heard in the background. September 15, 1998, the grand jury begins their investigation. Even though they were selected 5 months prior, the grand jury starts their investigation. Another detective quit on September 24th, citing too much focus on the Ramsey parents. Homicide Detective Lou Smith quits and says in his resignation letter that a very dangerous killer is still out there. This gives the Ramseys the fuel they need to convince authorities to shift the focus of the investigation. Well, I don't believe that the police should only be focusing on one aspect of the case. They should be following all leads, whether it's the parents or someone else. The grand jury begins hearing forensic evidence on October 13, 1998. The grand jury started hearing the case, learning about forensic evidence like DNA, hair, and fibers from the scene. They also toured the family's home in Boulder 9 days later. The 2 stories in the National Enquirer had said an anonymous source said John believed photographer Stephen Miles killed JonBennet. John goes back to Colorado to face Miles in a civil case. They could have just, if they had DNA samples off of JonBennet, why didn't they take this guy's Stephen Miles DNA and compare it? Maybe they did. On December 3rd, 1998, more family DNA is collected. Almost 2 years after the killing, DNA evidence is requested of 5 Ramsey family members, though they are not suspects. Investigators simply want to try to identify who the DNA in the house belongs to. In 1999, a teddy bear takes center stage. Investigators appealed to the online community to try to find information about a Santa Claus teddy bear that was reportedly found in JonBennet's bedroom. They hoped by finding the manufacturer and where it was sold, they can link more dots. In March 18, 1999, the first detective on the case resigns. Yet another resignation. Arndt resigns because of all the criticism. On May 19, 1999, Burke is no longer a suspect, so they cleared him. Now 12 years old, Burke is secretly questioned by the grand jury, and he's officially declared a witness only, not a suspect. September 13, 1999, Detective Arndt says he knows who killed JonBennet. In the interview on Good Morning America, Arndt says she knows who the killer is, but won't say who. September 30, 1999, JonBennet's half-siblings testify. John, Andrew, and Melinda, who had already been cleared in March 1997, testify in front of the grand jury. Hunter says that there isn't enough sufficient evidence to charge anyone in the murder. On March 17, in 2000, the Ramseys published a book. John and Patsy released The Death of Innocence about their daughter's murderer, along with the publicity campaign to promote it. John and Patsy hold a press conference on May 24th, 2000. JonBennet's parents held a conference to announce that lie detector tests confirm they are innocent in the death of their daughter. However, the test wasn't run by the FBI and not acceptable to investigators. However, you can't really... The lie detector tests, I don't believe, can be used as evidence because even murderers have been able to pass it. So, with no answers in sight at the time of her death, JonBennet's mother, Patsy, a former pageant queen herself, passes away at the age of 49 from ovarian cancer. She had been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer in 1993. Patsy is buried next to JonBennet. Burke breaks his silence but reveals no answers in 2016. After 20 years, JonBennet's brother Burke sits down for an interview with Dr. Phil. It probably was some pedophile in the pageant audience, he said twice. Okay, so now that we know what happened, let's go to the autopsy report. Here we go. Let's go to her autopsy report. Okay, so there's a whole list of things that happened to her. We'll go through them. Okay, so her date of birth was 8/6/90. 1990. She was 6 years old, female. Autopsy number 96A155. Her death was at 12/26/96. I don't really understand this stuff. Okay, so what's her final diagnosis for the autopsy? Ligature strangulation, number 1, I, circumferential ligature with associated ligature furrow of the neck, abrasions and petechial hemorrhages, neck. She has hemorrhages, conjunctival surfaces of eyes and skin and face. She has like a lot of damage done to her. Scalp contusions, craniocerebral injuries, linear comminuted fracture of right side of skull, contusions of right cerebral hemisphere, that means like brain damage, subarachnoid subdural hemorrhage, small contusions, tips of temporal lobe, abrasions of the right cheek. Oh my god, it just goes on and on and on. Abrasions of left lower back and posterior left lower leg. Abrasions and vascular congestion of vaginal mucosa. So I think these are like the most important things to know. So we have here abrasions of left lower back and posterior left lower leg. What does that mean? It's basically multiple contusions and abrasions of the head, neck, torso, and extremities. It's basically repetitive movements, improper lifting can do this to somebody. It's more like an injury in the with the discs. One second. I thought I had it all down pat. Skeletal injury to child due to violent act of another individual. That's what it is. Yeah. There's like a whole list of it's like skeletal trauma. It's basically skeletal trauma, also in the leg. Let's see what else it says. Hemorrhage progression, linear pattern of contusions of right cerebral hemisphere. So that's brain injury. And then we have the one which was most, I think, relevant to abrasion and vascular congestion of vaginal mucosa. So we're going to look that up. And you'll see so basically they were trying to say that it was like a one-time thing with JonBennet, but because of this, the autopsy report, they believe that she had like a lot of she had like continual sexual abuse happening to her, sexual molestation. So what does this mean? Okay. Let's see. See what this means. Okay. The forensic examination following rape has two primary purposes: to provide health care and to collect evidence. Physical injuries need treatment so that they heal without adverse consequences. The pattern of injuries also has forensic significance in that injuries are linked to the outcome of legal proceedings. This literature review investigates the variables related to genital injury, prevalence, and location that are reported in a series of retrospective reviews of medical records. The author builds the case that the prevalence and location of the genital injury provide only a partial description of the nature of genital trauma associated with sexual assault and suggest a multidimensional definition of genital injury pattern. Several of the cited studies indicate that new avenues of investigation, such as refined measurement strategies for injury severity and skin color, may lead to advancements in healthcare forensics and criminal justice sciences. Genital injury prevalence, which is calculated from injury frequency, so like how many times this person was raped or molested or sexually assaulted, can be described as a proportion of females with an occurrence of any injury at an anogenital location following sexual assault. Anogenital injury location can be classified as external labia majora, labia minora, periurethral area, perineum and posterior fourchette, internal fossa navicularis, hymen vagina, cervix, and anal anus and rectum. The prevalence of genital injury resulting from sexual assault varies by examination types and ranges from 5% on direct visualizations. So basically, it's talking about this is like talking about that it was continual. It was over a long period of time. Her JonBenet's abuse happened. Let's see if you can give us a more clear answer. So basically, her hymen was not intact. Her she had been wiped down. Her vaginal area, she had damage there. It's like really bad. Let's see this one maybe. Okay, so how do I make it bigger? Can't make it bigger for some reason. Oh my god. It's like reports, but I can't get like the proper report. It basically means like she was damaged down there and it was constant. Even though they say, oh, like there's no direct proof that she was penetrated, but there's direct proof that she's been assaulted. So that's what it means. So it says, okay, now we're going to go to um, basically one of her problems was she was beaten so bad that her discs were all broken and out of place. Okay. Now we're going to go into detail the autopsy report. Okay. The body of this 6-year-old female was first seen by me. This is the person that's doing the autopsy. After I was called to address and identify as to an address identified as 755 15th Street in Boulder, Colorado. I arrived at the scene approximately 8 p.m. on 12/26 and entered the house where the descendant's body was located at approximately 8:20 p.m. I initially viewed the body in the living room of the house. The decedent was laying on her back on the floor, covered by a blanket and a Colorado Avalanche sweatshirt. On removing these two items from the top of the body, and the decedent was found to be lying on her back with her arms extended up over her head. The head was turned to the right. A brief examination of the body discloses ligature around the neck and ligature around the right wrist. Also noted was a small area of abrasion or contusion below the right ear on the lateral aspect of the right cheek. Prominent dried abrasions were present on the lower left neck. After examining the body, I left the residence at approximately 8:30 p.m. So, external exam. The decedent is clothed in a long-sleeved white knit collarless shirt. The mid-anterior chest area, which contains an embroidered silver star decorate with silver sequins, tied loosely around the right wrist. Overlying the sleeve of the shirt is a white cord. At the knot, there is one tail end which measures 5.5 inches in length with a frayed end. The other tail of the knot measures 15.5 inches in length and ends in a double loop knot. This end of the cord is also frayed. There are no defects noted in the shirt, but the upper anterior right sleeve contains a dried brown tan stain measuring 2.5 times 1.5 inches, consistent with mucus from the nose and mouth. There are long white underwear with an elastic waistband containing a red and blue stripe. The long underwear are urine stained anteriorly over the crotch area and anterior legs. No defects are identified. Beneath the long underwear are white panties with printed rosebuds and the word Wednesday on the elastic waistband. The underwear is urine stained, and in the inner aspect of the crotch are several red areas of staining measuring up to 0.5 inch maximum dimension. External evidence of injury, located just below the right ear at the right angle of. It's like, while I go through this, like, when you read about the extent of her injuries, it's like so sad. Locally located just below the right ear at the right angle of the mandible, 1.5 inches below the right external auditory canal, is a 3-something inch area of rust-colored abrasion in the lateral aspect of the left lower eyelid at the interconjunctival surface. She has hemorrhages in her eyes, in the skin of the upper eyelids, as well as the lateral left cheek. On overting the left upper eyelid, they are much smaller, less than 1 millimeter petechial hemorrhages located on the conjunctival surface. Possible petechial hemorrhages located on the conjunctival surfaces of the right upper and lower eyelids. But livor mortis on this side of the face makes definitive identification difficult. Wrapped around the neck with a double knot in the midline of the posterior neck is a length of white cord similar to that described as being tied around the right wrist. So it's the same cord that's been tied around her neck and her wrist. This ligature cord is cut in on the right side of the neck and removed. A single black ink mark is placed on the left side of the cut, and a double black ink mark on the right side of the cut. So it was so deep that she had ink marks. The posterior knot is left intact. Extending from the knot on the posterior aspect of the neck are two nails of the knot, one measuring 4 inches in length and having a frayed end, and the other measuring 17 inches in length. Wow. I can't read the whole thing, it's just too sad. Also secured around the neck is a gold chain with a single charm in the form of a cross. A deep ligature furrows and circles the entire neck. Oh my god. Oh my god. The area of abrasion and petechial hemorrhages of the skin of the anterior neck includes the lower left neck. Just to the left of the midline, a roughly triangular parchment-like rust-colored abrasion, which measures 1.5 inches in length with a maximum width of 7.75 inches. This is an abrasion. It's oriented in the apex superior and lateral. Oh my god. So she has a lot of ligatures and hemorrhages, and there's a measure up to 1 inch in length from 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch in wide on the left lateral aspect of the lower back. So like she has hemorrhaging on her back. The level top of the head are two dried rust-colored to slightly purple abrasions. This is like horrific. So it's just like going through all her damages that they've done to her. The unembalmed, well-developed, and well-nourished Caucasian female body measures 47 inches in length and weighs an estimated 40 pounds. The scalp is covered by long blonde hair, which is fixed in two ponytails, one on top of the head secured by a cloth hair tie and blue elastic band, and one in the lower back of the head secured by a blue elastic band. No scalp trauma is identified. The external auditory canals are patent and free of blood. The eyes are green and the pupils equally dilated. The sclera are white. The nostrils are both patent and contain a small amount of tan mucus material. The teeth are native and in good repair. Tongue is smooth. The chest is symmetrical. Breasts are pubescent. The abdomen is flat and contains no scars. No palpable organomegaly or masses are identified. The external genitalia are that of a prepubescent female. No pubic hair is present. The anus is patent. Examination of the right extremities is unremarkable. On the middle finger of the right hand is a yellow metal band. Around the right wrist is yellow metal identification bracelet with the name JonBennet on one side, and the date is 12/25/96 on the other side. A red ink line drawing in the form of a heart is located on the palm of the left hand. That's weird. The fingernails of both hands are of sufficient length for clipping. Examination of the back is unremarkable. There is dorsal rigor mortis, which is non-blanching. Livor mortis is also present of the right side of the face. At the time of the initiation of the autopsy, there is a mild 1-2 plus rigor mortis of the elbows and shoulders, with more advanced 2-3 plus rigor mortis of the joints of the lower extremities. I'm not going through everything because it's just too much, but it looks like she was like stuck in that position because of rigor mortis set in. She had rib fractures. She had body cavities. Lungs. Those were their lungs. The cut sections of the lungs disclose an intact alveolar architecture with a small amount of watery fluid exuding from the cut surfaces with mild pressure. So it looks like her lungs are also hemorrhaging. Gosh. The spleen has a fine, wrinkled purple capsule. Cut sections are homogeneous and disclose readily identifiable red and white pulp. The adrenal glands are of normal size and shape. Genitalia, bladder, contracted and contains no urine because she peed herself. The bladder mucosa is smooth and tan gray. No intrinsic abnormalities are seen. Genitalia, the upper portions of the vaginal vault contain no abnormalities. The prepubescent uterus measures 3 times 1 times 0.8 centimeters and is unremarkable. The cervical contains no abnormalities. Both fallopian tubes and ovaries are prepubescent and unremarkable by gross examination. But it was said that she has damage there, so this is just, she was hemorrhaging in her skull. That girl got tortured to death. Yikes. There's mild chronic inflammation in the trachea. Her liver is preserved, her pancreas, unremarkable. Yeah. She has vaginal mucosa. All of the sections contain vascular congestion and focal and interstitial chronic inflammation. So she has inflammation in her vagina. A small piece of tissue from the 7 position of the vaginal wall hymen contains epithelial erosion with underlying capillary congestion. A small number of red blood cells is present on the eroded surface, as it is birefringent foreign material. Acute inflammatory infiltrate is not seen. So, it turns to be. So they swabbed everything. Her eyebrows, her thighs, her cheeks, her tubes. They took tubes of blood. So that's what the poor girl went through. And now I want to show you the interview of that lady. What's her name? Linda Arndt. Interview. JonBennet. Here. We'll play it very quickly so you can. Here, show you it in YouTube. She was working in.
I know who killed JonBennet. There's no doubt in my mind who killed JonBennet. And until While this investigation is still ongoing, I don't think it's appropriate that I say that name out loud.
8:10 a.m. Arndt arrived at the Ramsey home and meets John Ramsey for the first time.
How did he strike you? Cordial. Cordial? Mm-hmm. Upset? Cordial. Distraught? Cordial.
And that's what she says she did all morning. Make mental notes of all things curious, including, she says, the fact that Mr. and Mrs. Ramsey remained apart in separate rooms for most of the day. That at one point, she says John Ramsey took time out in the middle of the crisis to read his mail.
I remember seeing John in the kitchen, looking through his mail, and I made a note that he was looking at his mail, and then I wondered, where did your mail come from?
Isn't it possible maybe he was opening the mail looking for a clue from the kidnapper?
I don't know, and I don't speculate. It's a piece of information that I see. It's something that I know.
You thought it was unusual, however.
I can say that it stuck out.
10 a.m., the deadline imposed by the writer of the ransom note for a telephone call.
10 o'clock comes and goes, and there's no acknowledgement within the house from anyone that the deadline imposed by the author of the ransom note is come and gone.
Nobody said it's 10 o'clock and the kidnappers haven't called?
Nobody said that.
Arndt called her station house for backup repeatedly, but none had arrived.
How many times did you call the police department asking where your backup was and what was going on? Well, I remember at least 2 calls. Both times I was told everybody's in a meeting.
So basically, this police officer, she goes to the house. She's the only one in the crime scene. And she's alone, so if anything goes out of control, she's anyways trying to call for backup because there's a crime scene there. Or there could be a crime scene there, and nobody's coming. And once the body was found, even she wants an ambulance, and there was no one there. The police really did a bad job with this, and they ignored her calls for backup.
They got your message, and that was it.
Were you feeling pressure being in charge of a group this large and with anxiety that high?
I felt tremendous pressure.
She says she gave him specific instructions not to touch anything. She says John Ramsey headed straight to the basement. She heard Fleet White scream for an ambulance, and then a chilling discovery. For Arndt, the pieces of the puzzle fell into place.
And I see John Ramsey carrying JonBennet up the last 3 steps from the basement. And my mind exploded. And everything that I had noted that morning that stuck out instantly made sense. And JonBennet was clearly dead, and she's been dead for a while. I ordered him to put JonBennet down. I knelt next to her and I leaned down to her face. And John leaned down opposite me, and his face was just for mine. And we had a nonverbal exchange that I will never forget. And he asked if she was dead. And I said, yes, she's dead. And I told him to go back to the room and to dial 911. And as we looked at each other, I remember, and I wore a shoulder holster, tucking my gun right next to me and consciously counting out that 18 bullets.
I think we know who she thinks killed JonBennet.
Why did you do that? Because I didn't know if we'd all be alive when people showed up. I said everything made sense in that instance. And I know what happened.
Do you think your fear was well-founded?
You bet I do. There's no doubt in my mind.
To this day?
Never wavered.
You were afraid because you thought the killer was still in the house.
I knew it.
Absolutely?
Absolutely.
Still alone in the living room with John Ramsey, Arndt then heard Patsy Ramsey's voice.
And I heard a wail. Just a guttural moan. Aching wail. From the back area. It's probably one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard, and anguished. And I saw the rest of the people, the Patsy and the pastor and the 4 friends, come with them towards the living room. So I was like, you want to say goodbye to JonBennet? This is the only time you'll have to do it. And, there's just so much. There's so much pain. And I called 911. I get my radio number. And I said, the kidnapping has turned into a murder.
This house had suddenly become a homicide crime scene.
Oh, it became hell. JonBennet was brought up about 5 minutes after 1. And, at 10 after 1, nobody showed up. And I looked out the window to the street, and I saw an ambulance slowly drive by. And I thought, I am in the Twilight Zone.
Meanwhile, the pastor led the Ramseys and their friends in prayer in the living room, holding hands as JonBennet's body lay before them.
I thought that would be the best way to organize everyone, to keep them distracted, to keep them from touching JonBennet, and to keep them focused on something other than looking at JonBennet.
1:20 p.m., after 3 hours as the only officer on what Arndt calls an incredibly tense crime scene, and 20 minutes after JonBennet's body was found, backup finally arrived. The next day, the autopsy on JonBennet was conducted. Linda Arndt was there.
I hadn't seen savagery done to a child, or even an adult, until the doctor peeled back her scalp, and saw that horrific fracture to her head. It was the length of her head.
It was 8.5 inches long, and there was something else even more disturbing.
She had trauma to her vagina.
What kind of trauma?
It would be trauma that would be consistent with injuries seen in sexual assault cases.
Recently?
I guess the best way to say that was what was seen was not the first time injury.
The coroner, in fact, said the evidence was inconclusive, but ABC News has confirmed that 3 medical experts who consulted for the Boulder Police Department concluded the injuries were consistent with prior sexual abuse. As the Ramsey investigation dragged on for weeks, then months, and then years, the criticism of Linda Arndt's actions that December day continued. But she still defends her actions, saying she has become a scapegoat for a flawed investigation.
I believe
And
her.
Linda Arndt remains convinced that she knows who killed JonBennet Ramsey. She will not say the killer's name, but has no doubt that justice will never be done. Do you think this person will ever be indicted, will ever be charged or convicted?
No.
What you're saying is, whoever killed JonBennet will get away with murder.
Yes.
So, like,
Another obstacle. The forensic science at the time didn't allow investigators to learn much from the ransom note. Only that Patsy Ramsey might have written it. But today, we can do far more sophisticated analysis of a text and what it says about the writer. They have time on their hands, and they're also really verbal. It could be Aphrodite Jones consults Dr. James Pennebaker, a textual content analyst who often consults with the FBI.
What do you make of the length of this ransom note?
Generally, ransom notes are very, very short. This one is uncanny in terms of its length and its specificity. In any text, there are two types of words, content words. They basically tell us what people were saying. In a ransom note such as this, it would be where to take the money, how to do the draw, and so forth. But these other words, these function words, they're really psychologically rich. Using computer software that compares a text to writing samples from thousands of control groups, Pennebaker can extract a profile of the writer, or as the case may be, writers. It comes across as about a 74% chance that it was penned by a woman. But if you look at the actual content words themselves, it's about a 60% chance it's a male. Almost as though there was a male who was saying, we've got to say this, and the woman is kind of translating that onto the page. Could John Ramsey have dictated the note while Patsy transcribed?
yeah, so I believe her. I believe this lady's story, and I believe she was a scapegoat because the police department wouldn't send backup and evidence was tampered with, and I believe that she was sexually abused, JonBennet, for like a very, very long time. And it's really sad. So there was damage to her hymen. They were cleared, but like doesn't mean they're still innocent. You know what I mean? Just because there's no DNA found. You know, it could be more than one person that did this to JonBennet. You know. It says here, is JonBenet's murder a DNA case or not? Whether the mystery of JonBenet's murder can be solved by DNA alone. Former Boulder Police Chief Mark Beckner, who headed up the department from 1998 to 2014, said in an Ask Me Anything session on Reddit last year that the investigation considered the DNA important, but that there was other crucial evidence in the case that couldn't be ignored. Mary Lacey, the DA who said the DNA exonerated them, made up her mind years before that a mother could not do that to a child, thus the family was innocent, Beckner wrote. He says, Stan Garnett, the current Boulder County DA, told ABC News that no case is ever solely reliant on DNA, so you need to take into account everything. The circumstantial evidence, the DNA evidence. He says, DNA is part of the case, but you have to account for everything else. There were problems with the crime scene. You have the ransom note. You have debates about the case of the death. To solve this case, we have to account for all that. So they say that ignoring the male DNA would be a huge mistake. And he says, someone else says this is definitely a DNA case. Kobylinski said that the markers found on the long johns are not enough of a profile to match those found in the panties. So they couldn't match the DNA found on her long johns to the ones in her underwear, to the DNA in her underwear, in JonBenet's underwear. And as Lacey wrote in her letter exonerating the Ramseys, but he would describe their markers from both the long johns and the panties as being consistent. So it couldn't match. It could have been two people that did this to her. The DNA does belong to an unknown male. Lacey did the right thing in clearing the Ramsey family. So the Ramsey family was cleared, but it doesn't mean just because someone's cleared, like there's a lot of murderers that go free because of lack of DNA evidence, etc. So they say there was no motive for the parents and no psychopathy, Lacey said. She added that she is one of the only two people who have read the entire transcript transcripts of Patsy Ramsey's psychiatric interviews, in which Lacey said she saw no indication of jealousy towards JonBennet or any violent tendencies. In 2006, when Patsy Ramsey was dying of cancer and even on her deathbed, Lacey said the distraught mother was trying to solve the death of her daughter. They say that the DA's office ignored important evidence that pointed away from the family. And so, but they only focus on the family. And I believe that also that's a bad thing. You need to keep your mind open to all scenarios, to all areas. So, the case is cold. It's never been, it's a mystery. It's never been solved. And this person exonerated them, and that was it. So that's the story of little JonBennet, beautiful little girl. And I do believe that we'll just never know. Like that lady said, like that person will never be brought to justice who killed her, and it was over a long period of time that she was abused. That's what I believe. Red lipstick on a child, that's disgusting. You know? Here she looks normal. Beautiful little girl. Yeah, so that's the story of JonBennet. And this was heavy. You know, it was a heavy case. Anyway, yeah, that was my I felt like I should do this. I should make a video because I was having an argument with this guy on YouTube. And he's saying you can't accuse the family, but I feel like everyone should be under suspicion because it's unsolved, you know, even though they were cleared. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's the story. Here's the letter. The ransom letter. Poor little girl. Wow. JonBennet. With your doggy. Yeah, so that's the story of a little girl who never got justice. Okay.